Every day a full-grown tiger appeared at the gates of the Indian military. Growling, he paced slowly, obviously trying to get the soldiers' attention. The men of the camp didn't know what to think. Although trained for combat, fighting a tiger was not exactly on the agenda. There were quite a few among the soldiers who had had unpleasant experiences with these predators in their home villages. What did the tiger want there? Why did he come to the camp every day? Some began to believe that the tiger was in search of food and was scanning the fence for an entrance into the base. Fear grew in the camp. It eventually grew so strong that the squad commander felt compelled to act. He couldn't stand by and watch as his men suffered from the predator's presence and risked something happening to them every day. Therefore, the commander decided to contact a zoologist in the nearby town. The zoologist was very surprised to be contacted by the military. It wasn't part of his everyday job to help with such an extraordinary problem. Nevertheless, the man agreed to go to the military base to help the helpless people. He had no idea what to expect. When the zoologist entered the military compound, he could smell the soldiers' fear. Something was clearly wrong. He was escorted to the commander's quarters where he was briefed on the problem. A full-grown tiger walking along a military fence every day. The zoologist could hardly believe what he was hearing. This was very unusual behavior for such a big cat. Of course, the man agreed to help. So, with the help of the brave soldiers, he began to log the movements of the tiger, at what times of the day it crept out of the dense Indian jungle. The zoologist spent 2 days observing the predator and came to a daring conclusion. He revisited the commander in his quarters and explained that what he had learned was that the tiger was trying to get the soldiers' attention and in fact posed no threat. The zoologist asked for a few hours to come up with a plan to solve the problem. The commander waited patiently, and just as the sun began to hide behind the trees again, the zoologist announced his plan. He asked a group of the bravest and fittest soldiers to accompany him to track down the tiger. At first the commander was unconvinced. He was concerned about risking his soldiers' lives for the opinion of a supposed expert. However, when word got around in the camp that the zoologist was looking for a group of men, many soon volunteered. If tracking the predator was the only way to get the tiger to leave camp, they felt they had to help. And so the commander agreed. The zoologist explained the risks they would be taking. The men agreed that they would follow his instructions and provide protection if necessary. The zoologist pointed out the importance of staying calm if they were to successfully follow the tiger into the dense and lush jungle. As dusk fell, the group of men positioned themselves and waited. They were equipped with their guns and supplies that would last a few days. Only when the sun appeared in the sky did the tiger sneak out of the jungle in his usual manner. He approached the fence and began his ritual of walking along the fence. The low growl scared the group of soldiers, but the zoologist calmed them down. After about an hour, the tiger turned back to the jungle. Now the group of men had to embark on their perilous mission. At a safe distance from the predator, the men began to stalk the tabby cat. The sweltering humidity bothered the soldiers as they pushed deeper and deeper into the dense jungle. From time to time the tiger would stop and face the group. He seemed the noticing men, but not bothered that they followed him. On the contrary. It seemed like every time he turned he wanted to make sure they were still following him. As night fell, however, the tiger disappeared. Since there was no other option, the soldiers cautiously set up camp. Everyone took turns looking out for threats. When the sun came up the next day, the tiger was nowhere to be seen. Disappointed, the group began to wonder if the zoologist had made a mistake. They thought that the tiger had in fact lured them into its hunting territory. But the zoologist kept calm and assured the men that he was a good tracker. So the troop went in search of clues and soon found what they were looking for. The group then followed the tiger tracks. After a while they stopped. They heard a loud noise. They broke through the edge of the jungle and found a raging river. After the recent monsoon rains, it was only logical that the river should rush like this. The zoologist worried because the tracks stopped at the river. That meant the tiger had swum across the river. But why? He knew tigers were good swimmers, but with a raging river like this, it made no sense that the tiger would risk his life like that. At that moment one of the soldiers shouted excitedly, "There he is!" Just a little upriver was her orange and white striped friend. He was standing near a rocky area that appeared to have been churned up by the flood waters. So the group worked their way up the riverbank to find a safe place to cross. They found a flat, rocky path that led to the tiger. They advanced slowly, one behind the other. The closer they got, the further upstream the tiger went. When the zoologist reached the other side, he was determined to follow the retreating tiger. But then he was called back by the soldiers. At first he ignored her, but then he was yelled at until he turned around. The soldiers gestured toward the boulders that lay where the tiger had previously stood. Two of the men began removing stones. When the zoologist returned, the soldiers explained that they heard screams from under the rocks. So together they tried to see what was under the rubble. When one of the soldiers managed to pull up one of the last stuck rocks, a cavity opened up underneath. The zoologist aimed his flashlight into the dark abyss and was greeted by four eyes. Then he realized that they were the tiger's cubs that were trapped down there. He instructed the soldiers to quickly remove all other rocks. And indeed, there sat two small tiger cubs in a cavernous formation. It became clear that the tiger was not male, but female. She must have left her cubs hunting in the cave, which was then eroded by the river's floodwaters. All the water had left a pile of debris in which the boys were trapped. Since she could not free herself, they cried out for her mother. Since she had no way of freeing her, she had gotten help from the soldiers who were camped a few kilometers away. They had finally understood what she needed. She wasn't sneaking around the military base because she was hungry or wanted to invade. She asked for help. The group pulled the boys out of the cave and gently set them down on the ground, far from the rushing river. They heard a loud roar from upstream and realized that the mother tiger could see her cubs and was dying to go to them. So they retreated across the river as they had come. They waited patiently to witness the reunion between the mother and her cubs. It was a sight the men never expected. The mother ran down to her cubs and immediately began stroking and grooming them. All this time her little cubs had been starving and calling for their mother. When the soldiers saw that the tiger was happy and the cubs were safe, they said goodbye. With a feeling in triumph they made their way back to the camp. The commander thanked the zoologist and the whole camp celebrated his victory. The tiger has not returned to camp since, and the soldiers knew the mother and her cubs were doing well. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now watch a video of a man who saved the life of a crying tiger.